Hi, everybody. I am Amy Chester, the director of Rebuild by Design, where Rainproof was founded and is housed, and it's great to see you today. Thank you for joining us. Rebuild by Design is part of the Institute for Public Knowledge at New York University in New York City, and we've been working on flooding issues since Hurricane Sandy. And we've been working on specifically rainwater and stormwater issues since Hurricane Ida 5 years ago, next week. And just, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a tough week. We got so many people's RSVPs that we're traveling, and our office is going to be closed soon too, so we totally get it. But we also have this very important moment that's coming up next week, and just wanted to give you the information we have so you can incorporate it into your stories or your questions, but as you interview other people. So we will begin. Joanna, you want to advance the slide? Great. Thank you. So on September 21st, 2021, the remnants of Hurricane Ida dropped more than 3 inches of rain on New York City in a single hour. It was a record at the time, and we can tell you many more examples where it's been much more since then. New York City tragically lost 13 lives. Hurricane Ida left a path of destruction and a collective head scratching, wondering what could have been done to prepare, what can be done to help those most affected, and what should be done to prevent a similar event from happening again. Crucially, Ida revealed that every neighborhood in New York City could flood. This was our new reality. New York City is increasingly flooding from rain. Climate change is here, and storms that feel extreme now will only become the frequent and more intense with devastating consequences. And we saw that just last year when we lost two more New Yorkers during a rainstorm. Years later, we understand and have seen that storms that have once felt extreme are no longer rare, from Hurricane Henri and Ophelia, the devastating October 30th flood in 2025, and just this past May, which you'll hear a little bit more about today, to the many unnamed storms in between. Ida was just our preview. In response to the 13 deaths of the New Yorkers caused by flooding, Rebuild by Design launched Rainproof New York City, which is a movement merging research, design, policy, and collective action to transform New York City into a sponge. We know that the solutions exist. We knew that they existed the day after Ida, and we know that our infrastructure can be made safer. But communities also need the knowledge and trusted relationships and leaderships to prepare storms, to shape local solutions, and to turn our city into a sponge. And today we are also joined by three community leaders. I'm really happy to have Amit Shivprasad here, who is a Hollis resident and Community Board Queens 12 member. Valine Bott, who's a small business owner for private Picassos, and Zalia Grillet, who is from Brooklyn Level Up, yay Brooklyn, and we'll be talking about the incredible work that they are doing. Next slide, please. And Rainproof New York City has a lot of resources that might be helpful to you. We started with the impact, and we put out multiple research reports understanding the shortfalls that our sewer system is able to be able to process to keep up with the rain. We created these Rainproof New York City working groups, working hands in glove with many city agencies. I think it was 14 city agencies and 2 federal agencies, about 50 different organizations, 100 experts. We worked together for 6 months and we came up with recommendations. Those recommendations were launched 2 years ago, and the city's been working on them. We've also been working with partners at our Rainproof New York City implementation program, where we've been we're working with local New Yorkers who are rainproofing their community. Next slide. And we've been supporting 10 different organizations throughout the city over the past year, bringing the rainproof recommendations to the ground. So if you're interested in understanding what's happening, please let us know. And we have a massive group of experts, local, national, international, that have been working with us to rainproof New York City. If you're ever looking for any type of expert, whether it's a community member, an engineer, an architect, you can just let us know. Next slide. And today we're going to release the Rainproof New York City story map. It looks like this. And we created it because we know that the city maps, the city predictive maps, were out of date as soon as Ida hit. So the city put out their map about a month before Hurricane Ida, which showed some of the areas that could be susceptible to rain now, and another map that would show that the areas that New York City would be susceptible to rain in 2100. And Hurricane Ida and every storm since has blown that map away. So we want to be able to tell that story, but also tell the stories of the communities that are experiencing it. Next slide. And the biggest takeaway and kind of shocking is that there have been over 100,000 reports to 311 of flooding since Hurricane Ida, and our map maps them all. Next slide, please. It goes through a number of different layers. Half of the reports were sewer backups, and that's over 55,000 reports were sewer backups, followed by clogged storm drains, and that's about 30% of the reports, or 35,000, followed by water in the street, which is 17,000, and then water in basements. And of course, we know that not everybody would call 311. Actually, not everybody would call 311 to report anything, let alone a water in their basement. So these are undercounts, and these are only coming from the people that we know are more likely to call the city and ask for help. So tends to be people who can speak English, who are in non-immigrant neighborhoods, and we know that this isn't the fullest picture, but it's the one that the city is looking at, and we are too. Next slide. The highest concentration of 311 reports have been in Staten Island, where there's been 25 times more reports per 1,000 residents. Next slide. And we also looked at FloodNet's sensors. FloodNet is this incredible program of NYU, and they have 434 flood sensors in collaboration with DEP around the city. It's only 434. And what we found is that the highest recorded depth of a flood was 46 inches this May, 2026. But within half a mile to that, there's been about 600 reports. And we have a meet here today who is a resident who lives on that block, and we'll talk to you about that flooding. And of course, it's not only just what happened in May, they've been experiencing it for a very long time. Thank you. Queens Community Board 2 has the most amount of flood reports, which is the highest concentration in any community board, followed by Community Board 13, also in Queens. I'm sorry, I said Community Board 2, but I meant 12. And then lastly, Council District 50 in Staten Island has the most amount of flood reports, followed by Council District 27 in Queens. Now I'm going to ask Johanna to stop sharing and ask my colleague Judy Wynn to come on up and take us through the map.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for walking through the findings. And so I'm going to walk through and do a demo of the map itself. And so what you see on my screen right now, it's what it looks like on the first load on how to use the map. And I'm going to walk through each step, starting with the map layers on the top right. So currently, we have on default the floodplains for today, which includes the 100-year storm, 100-year floodplain from FEMA used by the city as well, from storm surge, as well as storm water, so rainfall as well. You can toggle things on and off, so I can add in the future flooding as well. So the darker blue was activated, which includes 2100 storm surge and 2080 storm water. For now, I'll just keep what today's floodplain is and go through how the other layers could be used. So on what's been reported to 311, as Amy had mentioned, there's 4 categories that we looked into. If I toggle on street flooding, the total number on the layer is the total count since Hurricane Ida, September 2021. You can zoom in and see the darkest color or higher number of reports. So darkest red is going to have the most reports since Hurricane Ida. You can do this again for clogged storm drains, so catch basins that have been reported that there's issues of clogging, and so you can see it's activated across all blocks in New York City. Again, you can do it for water in basements. The darker the purple, the more reports. So in this case, five or more reports is a darker purple. I can zoom in. I can hover over using my mouse to identify what the total count is for each of those points. And then also for sewer backups. So people, again, reporting, their buildings or homes that have sewer backup since Hurricane Ida. And then for what's been built and the sensors that we're mentioning, so FloodNet sensors, if I click on that, the black diamonds is you can see there's 434 FloodNet sensors across the city. You can see there's lots of streets that do not have it as well. If you zoom in or hover over a floodnet sensors, which are these sensors attached to the street poles, they measure depth of water. So, for instance, the one I have hovered, it's in on 50th and 65th place. It's measured or has been triggered 4 times. The install date is May 2024, and the deepest reading for that floodnet sensors is 11.7 inches. And then this is the green infrastructure that has been built through DEP or Department of Environmental Protection's data set. I just also want to flag that all of these data that I've flagged are from Open Data New York City. And again, you can also refer to the methodology to learn more about each layer. And for DEP's layer, we have one for two color sets. The lighter green is being designed or being built, so it's in progress. The darker green are infrastructure, green infrastructure that have been built. So this includes rain gardens, basins. You can zoom in and hover to see which has been built. And then also for this analysis, we brought in council districts and community boards. So you can also toggle on which council districts that you want to focus on or community boards. Um, and that's that for the top right sections is the map layers. Again, the methodology has all of these layers explained and how we were able to get it from Open Data New York City. On the left-hand side is the stories that we're collecting from New Yorkers. Stories could be explored on the left-hand side. So already there are 22 stories on here. And if I click on one story, it's going to zoom in on where that user had placed their raindrop for their story and share their experience. The stories also accept media, so photos, images, voice notes, files, etc. And also gives information on a half mile from the story point. So half mile being a 10-minute walk. This is all the green infrastructure, all the 311 reports that have been reported in this half mile radius, and how many floodnet sensors are in there, etc. And I also want to flag that when you return to all stories, there's a few ways to navigate through the left-hand side. You can scroll down to read stories. You can look at this in a gallery format to see all the photos people have shared for their stories, flooding across New York. And then also be able to search keywords as well. So if I typed in subway, there's going to be a story attached to that term. So you can use keywords, neighborhoods, etc. You could also use a filter. So you can filter between 3 different categories that we have embedded, different hashtags for each story, and event, year, or neighborhood. And then I also want to flag that a feature of this tool or this map is you can actually click around and interact with it. So if I click on a map here, it's going to pull the half mile radius information on the left-hand side. So it takes a little bit, a few seconds to populate because it's taking it from live data from Open Data New York City to populate the information on the left-hand side. So within the point that I just clicked, this is what's been reported since Hurricane Ida, 375 reports. and only, one green infrastructure built, one green roof that I'm not sure is publicly available. However, there are two flood depth sensors on this map. You can kind of hover over and see what's been recorded. It's interesting that this one had been installed July 2024 and recorded zero point 0.9 inches. This one was recorded at a deeper depth. So this is information that we wanted to showcase. And then also another way to interact on this map is you can also use the search feature as well. Um, and that will also bring you to the half-mile radius from that point and populate the information on the left-hand side as well. You can toggle things on and off as well. So if you just want to focus on street flooding or just focus on green infrastructure, there's only four that was listed here. That's another way to do it as well. And that is, oh, sorry, before I end my demo, I also want to share that there are these three links at the top as well about the map, how you can use it. There are high level findings here on this, as well as I mentioned earlier, the methodology.
Thank you so much, Judy. And Judy made the map. So congratulations, Judy. It's a beautiful map, and also want to recognize all the incredible work that Rafal Mom does, who's our Rainproof New York City lead, and Johanna Lawton, who's out there doing many, many things, including running the Zoom right now. So really excited to have three community partners with us today who can come and tell their stories. We asked them to speak for 1 or 2 minutes. They are available for questions if you have any now or at any time afterwards. So I'm just going to introduce all three of them together, and then they'll go one after the other. The first is Amit Shiprasad, who's a Hollis resident who lives on the blocks that is the highest recorded depth of flooding in New York City since Hurricane Ida, or including a Hurricane Ida, and also a community board member. Valine Bott, who's a small business owner, and her small business is Private Picassos, who's been flooded, and Zalila Grillet, who's with Brooklyn Level Up, who's been a really strong community partner and is doing really incredible work on rain activated in their communities. So we'll just go in order. And Joanna, do you want to take down the slides and we'll ask Amit? Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Amy. I want to say good morning and happy Wednesday to all. My name is Amit Shiv-Prasad, as Amy said. I currently serve as the Land Use and Environmental Chair in Community Board 12. I'm also a member of our wonderful team of Squareage. I want to thank the Rainproof team for all the work you guys have done and bring attention to the flooding issue that all New Yorkers are starting to face with every major rainfall. My first flooding I've occurred was 2009 here in Hollis on 183rd Street. But Hurricane Ida changed my life. The way I look at flooding, my home suffers severe foundation damages from Hurricane Ida, especially leaving me and my senior parents homeless for almost 19 months as I try to work out a plan of rebuilding the home from those major flooding. But the flooding goes beyond impact of property damage in Hollis. It only takes 5 to 10 minutes of heavy rainfall on my street, 183rd Street, for the street to be flooded every time it rains. People worry about their homes, their families, their medication, and whether they'll be safe. Many of us no longer sleep peacefully during any rainfall or any rainstorm because of the fear and the trauma from the past floods. We also recognize the need from flooding, that mental and emotional toll the flooding takes on you, especially in our seniors and folks with medical conditions and families who may not have the resource to recover. I could personally tell you I have suffered severe health problems since Hurricane Ida and every rainfall that we have had. The city and state are currently working on ways to improve this, but we must do more to protect our community, not through better infrastructure, but also addressing the human cost of flooding. Because once we lose people in a community, we lose the community. Just this past May, we had 5 feet of water, and just this past Thursday, August 20th, we had almost 3 feet of water that left many homes with foundation problems. There's a home directly across the street that I'm living have lost their entire right side of their foundation of their home. Now that family of 7 or 8 is homeless. They don't have a place to stay because the Department of Buildings have issued a full vacate order. So flooding takes a toll on everyone, and there's more that needs to be done. Our team at Squarex has been working on different ways to help our community from flooding. Once again, I don't want to take much time. I just want to thank everyone for being on here tonight and thank the Rainproof for giving us the voice so we could bring our stories forward. Thank you. And Amy, I pass it back over to you.
Thank you. And we're going to have Aline share.
Hello. I'll wait. I guess I can start now. Yeah, so my name is Valine Bott, and I am the owner of Private Picassos. We're an art studio for kids in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn, and we experienced massive flooding and that crazy storm on October 30th of last year. We had been hit with a little bit of flooding earlier in the year, so I thought I was prepared with like a shop vac at a sump pump when some water started coming up in the interior drains because we're a basement commercial space. But honestly, within about 10 minutes, my one of my teachers started screaming from the front door of my business because the water was rushing down the stairs and started breaking through the glass of our front door and essentially filled up my entire kids' art studio like a fishbowl within about 20 minutes. Luckily, we were able to get the kids out of our space, including my own son. I foolishly thought I could keep pulling the door shut to try to stop some of the water coming in, which I know Ahmed and so many other people can relate to that. When that's happening, you don't really think clearly, and I get now why they call it a flash flood. We were able to get a lot of support from the community and our GoFundMe to reopen quickly, but since then, just like Amit said, I don't sleep well. I've literally just recently got a prescription for beta blockers from my psychiatrist because I'm grinding my teeth so much every time there's a flood watch, which seems to be pretty much every week. So I've really been focusing on what can I do to protect my business and my community, which is make sure the streets are actually cleaned and complain to 311 and sanitation constantly harass DEP to be cleaning out the catch basins. I purchased literally rubber waders and a giant pink raincoat, which is my company's colors. And just last week, I was out there on Thursday cleaning out all the catch basins for about an hour and a half just to stop water from going into my business or other homes and businesses. So I think that there's major infrastructure changes that need to happen. But I think as a resident of New York City, I want to make sure the city is using all of the facilities like sanitation and DEP to the fullest of their ability and make sure they're actually doing their job so the water has a place to go until these major changes can actually happen. And that's all I was going to say. I was going to keep it
Thank
short.
you, Valine. Perfect. Dalila, you're up.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So my name is Zalia Garrett, and I'm from Brooklyn Level Up. And I just wanted to start off by saying my story is no different than everyone else's here on this call, but just wanted to bring impact that similar to Emmett, flood story started with Hurricane Sandy. It made my family homeless, and we made them homeless for about 14 months. I grew up a Trinidadian girl in East Flatbush, and back then it didn't have the language to connect flooding to housing, displacement, generational wealth, or culture. I just knew that after water came, my home didn't feel as permanent anymore. So years later, I came back to Brooklyn after building a career in design and technology, and somehow found myself working with the very thing that changed my family. So I'm Zalia Gillette, and I'm CEO of Brooklyn Level Up, and we're an environmental tech, community development, and social action lab rooted here in East Flatbush. We work with East Flatbush, Flatbush, and Flatlands, which we affectionately call the Flats. And so much of our work starts with this one question: how do we make sure that people who built this community can actually remain here and thrive? Because the people of the Flats did not need a map to kind of tell them that flooding was a problem. They've been living it. Almost about 90,000 Brooklyn residents live at an elevated flood risk. Climate change and the continued concreting of our neighborhoods through new development means flooding now exists in places that it didn't before. And that wasn't really just a climate issue, it's a housing justice and generational wealth issue. For many families here, their home is their greatest and sometimes only source of wealth. When that home is repeated damage or loss, that impact doesn't end with just one storm. it can change what a family is able to pass on for generations. That understanding shaped our work with Rebuild by Design, which we're so happy to work with, as well as through Rainproof NYC. We worked alongside 60 residents and gathered more than 30 community stories and images. We asked people where the water goes, what happens when that comes, what they lost, sorry, what they figured out on their own, and what they want to change. And then with Brooklyn Level Up, we used what we learned and repurposed it. We put it back on every block. So with our partners, our forward, we created Rain Activated. It is at a center is around a little girl named Paige. She's from East Flappa. She's fictional, but her story isn't. In a lot of ways, she's the little girl I was, and she represents the children growing up on these same blocks today. We can kind of think of it as Banksy meets Brooklyn culture and community science. When it rains, hydrofluoric paint artwork reveals Paige on the floor, so that means that it's invisible in the day, but when it rains, it shows up. And hidden messages on our sidewalk is given, which activates the art, leading neighbors to a community flooding toolkit, as well as the community care guide that we've created. People didn't need to know that where flooding was happening. You need to know what to do. And with that information, they were able to put together practical resources for homeowners, renters to prepare for flooding, protect their homes, and understand their options and figure out what happens after that comes. So underneath this story is what the neighbors already know, but what we needed was to show the community data and to show people that they weren't alone. It allowed us to create art, tools, and resources that actually made sense for the people that lived here. And through Rebuild by Design and Rainproof, we're now helping to shape what comes next. We're carrying this work into neighborhood flooding planning, emergency preparedness, block level resilience, and EcoPower, which is our environmental tech um, internship that we help residents of New York City, young people who aren't just learning about these problems, but helping to solve it. And with that, we are working towards a larger vision, which is East Flatbush's first community resilience hub. So, with that being said, I think the work that we've done is not just workarounds. We really want to build things that can sustain and work through a different audience of resilience. And if you want, we have our community report back September 3rd, where you get to see all of these things in real time. So, with that being said, our goal is to make sure that the next generation is better at surviving what we have already survived and that we can actually do it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was perfect. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, we just want to give you a little bit of roundup of some of the things that we know now that we didn't know 5 years ago. And one is that we need way more flood sensors. There are less than 450 locations, over 468 square miles, and we have showed you the data that every place floods. And what that means is that the city doesn't actually know how much, except for 311 calls when people decide to make them. We know that every neighborhood is vulnerable, and that was the big wake up call. We talked about our flooding maps before Hurricane Ida being the coastal areas. We always knew that we were going to be susceptible to rain, but we didn't know it was going to happen this much, this fast. We know that not every New Yorker uses 311, so there are probably thousands of stories that are out there that are not being told. We need a massive investment in turning New York City into a sponge, making sure that neighborhoods and subways and buildings are being flood-proofed. And we also know there's a lot of success stories that are out there. Hoboken is a really good one from our Hurricane Sandy resilient parks. There are 5 interior parks that they use that can pump water from the surrounding community. And we know that there are that 70% of parks in New York City are located in areas that we know are going to flood and could, play that triple duty. Next slide, please. We've also accomplished a ton. Communities are accomplishing a lot. The city is accomplishing a lot. So we've come a far way. We don't want this to be doom and gloom. We want this to show you that this is a step in the journey of becoming towards rainproof. People are taking action in their communities. We have Rain Activated, which you just heard from. Dear Neighbor, which is an artist in Gowanus who's using both a podcast and murals around the neighborhood to be educating about rain. Flood Sensor Auntie, which is actually a show. It's going to be shown again during Climate Week and 4 more performances around the city. Actually, she has a new version of it. So I think it's called, I don't remember what it's called, but it's a new show. So even if you saw the last one, see this one. She does it in parks. It's incredible. It's a musical, and you actually learn so much from it. We ran the Rainproof New York City working groups with the mayor's office and DEP, which have influenced many things, including the resilience acquisition framework, which the city just announced that it's going to be looking at buyouts in jewel neighborhoods and in Hollis, Queens, where Amit is from. New York City OEM Strengthening Communities program, and they are continuously making communications improvements. They have a great new tagline that is like, I think it's rain is just rain until it floods, which really sums up, I think, how we all feel that rain is really, it's not a problem. And then all of a sudden it has become a problem. The city is focusing on 6 cloudburst neighborhoods where they're doing community planning in that neighborhood, looking at kind of a zone approach of managing stormwater. Of course, it's only a small group of we know in all the places that are flooding. The mayor's office has their Climate Strong Communities program, which is more of a comprehensive approach. It's looking at heat and flooding and other issues, and they're supporting local capacity. And then there's also an announcement of the Blue Belt system, which has been keeping Staten Island drier for many, many decades, and will be expanded to places like Prospect Park and are looking in other places. So at that, I think that's our last slide. So if you have a queue and if you have a question, let us know. Just put it in the Q&A and we are happy to take a look. So the first question I have is Judy. There's a question about how the map will be updated. Can you explain what data will happen automatically and what we'll need to update?
Yes, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, the map does update automatically with a half-mile radius. The map itself for the citywide will be updated every end of the month. So, we pull directly from Open Data in New York City. I run a query at the end of the month, and the total numbers for what we saw on the top right of all those layers, those will be updated once a month. However, the half mile of where you plan to put a geo point for your story, or if you click on another raindrop for reading stories, that gets updated automatically.
Thank you, Judy. We have a question for the community organizations. Maybe we could just go to all three of you pretty quickly of like what surprised you the most about the data? Or sorry, what do you wish you knew before the flooding that you now know and could help other people with?
Sure. I could take that really quick from my side. If I knew I was living in a pond, I would have never moved to this area in Hollis. I'm living on a block that was a formerly pond called Rock Hollow Pond back in the 18 and early 1900s. It was just sold to a investor who just backfilled it with dirt and they built homes on top of that. So if I had knew that back then, and you know, knock on wood, we don't want to ever see this happen again in New York, where something like this happened. But this is one of the biggest surprises I found out after Hurricane Ida.
And Amit, can you just maybe say how long your block has been flooding? Is it just Ida or
Yes.
is it before?
So we've had folks that's been living in this block for almost 50 years, and they've told me they have flooded from 1950 all the way up to last Thursday. So every rainfall of more than 5 to 10 minutes of heavy downpour, this block will flood.
And that's because the water table is really high in
Absolutely.
Hollis, where you are. So the water comes up from the ground. It's not only just the flood that comes from the sky, it's also the water that's coming up from the ground.
That's correct.
Valine, do you want to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I wish I had known what a catch basin was for real, prior to all of the flooding I experienced. And I remember when I posted one of my videos, I think earlier in the year, about how everyone should go out and clean their catch basins, one of my friends DM'd me and she was like, I don't think everyone knows what a catch basin is. She was like, I know, because you're always talking about it now. So just, I mean, I think so many of us are starting to be really, really affected by these storms and this flooding. So just knowing how our system works and the importance of that, and just something as simple as just maybe just clearing off your catch basin, maybe not using a leaf blower and just blowing the trash from your sidewalk into the street, maybe sweeping it up and putting it into the garbage can. Little things like that can make some small differences. I think that's what I really wish I had known. I also wish I had known that my commercial space had been flooded prior to me taking it over, even though I explicitly asked that. And I now know like the right to know law and all of that. I'm very aware of all those things. I love my space. I'm not sure if I would have taken it or not knowing that, but I think that's really important information that everyone should have available to them, whether commercial space, residential, it doesn't matter.
Thank you so much. Valine, do you want to just tell everybody what a catch basin is in case they don't know?
Oh, yeah, totally. As my son, my 10-year-old son calls me the Brooklyn flood lady, which that's just him being because I'm constantly talking about floods now. A catch basin is that little grate, you'll see at the corner of your street, sometimes in the middle of your block, that will always, pretty much always have leaves and trash on top of it, and that goes down to the sewers, and that's a really great place for the water to be absorbed. Obviously, we know that our system can get overwhelmed very, very quickly. And even those things can't hold all of it. But at the very least, if the water can go down and not be blocked, we can stop some of that water, hopefully, from going into homes and businesses.
Thank you, Valine.
Yeah.
Zalila.
Um, First of all, these answers are usually the ones that we give to everybody. And if I can give my point of view, even if I'm just a tenant, Brooklyn Level Up, we've done a lot of work to give resources to homeowners and tenants. And I feel like something that we can really add and that I wish I knew with coming back to Brooklyn, but this how bad it was. One of the biggest things that I did first was check on my elders. I may not know everybody that lives next to me, but maybe I should, right? I call her a young woman, but she's 90 years old. Her name is Daphne. And when she showed me the pictures of her front step, I was like, how did you get out of here? And she almost did it. Her home health aide was able to help her escape her home from being flooded. And it was literally up to her kneecaps. And she was like, if her home aide wasn't there, she wasn't sure somebody would be able to help her. And I think it's important that we get a chance to know who our neighbors are, who need support, what that looks like, because these are the people that aren't always thought about in emergency preparedness. They aren't really thought to say, like, hey, how can I support you in a flood? Or let them know because you have access to technology. They usually don't. They usually are like, what is this on my phone? And if you get an alert from 311, you can go tap on their door and be like, hey, there's a flood coming. Do you know where you're going? Or do you want me to be with you? And I think we should probably reenact a little bit more human experience to this because it's needed. And I think that's something we can advocate for. And I feel like Rainproof has done an even bigger part of that because with having this layer, we can get a chance to see ahead of time where it could possibly be, and that helps to advocate for that. And if I can add one last thing, I think it's around using our resources like storm gardens, creating areas of intention, and even telling our homeowners like build your things with an intentional part for storm drainage. Having storm gardens in your backyard, doing specific landscaping, and happy to use the architects of the community to do so.
Thank you very much. You were so well said, all of you. Our next question is what has surprised us most about the data once we put the map together? And I'll take that. Also, if Rafal or Judy or Joanna have any other things they want to add, please do. But I think the sheer number of reports, over 100,000 reports, really, really shocked me. I don't know what I was expecting, but I thought maybe it would be like 15,000. I do want to say that a report is a report that goes to 311. We do not know if that means 100,000 calls. Somebody could have called and said there's water in my basement and my street is flooding, potentially. So there might be, some overlap there, but those are still 100,000 separate reports. Anyone else wanna? All right. A last question about what we'd like the city council to do. It's an interesting question because the city is doing a lot. The city has just allocated quite a lot of money to flooding. In this case, it was coastal resilience that was passed in the last budget. The DEP is a coastal bureau that's finally funded after many, many years. So we're very excited about that. The city has some really good programs that we would like to see expanded, and the council could demand that that happens. And those are the cloudburst neighborhoods. That is the community work that the city is doing. They can also give more money to parks that can build the infrastructure they need, that can help the communities around them to become more flood resilient. And oh, I had another one in my head that I just lost, but I think there's a couple of things that we know the council could do. Oh, that the council could staff to put more DEP staff to clean out the storm drains, which we know is some of the biggest issues. If you have not yet checked out FloodNet, it's a hard thing to check out when it's not raining, but when it is raining, go to FloodNet and they have a map that shows you in real time the 430 sensors that are working right now that will show you exactly where it's flooding and how many inches it's flooding. And usually, but not always, but a lot of the time, some of the lower level floods, like 4, 6, 8 inches, are because of the drains being clogged. So that's something that we talked about just before, and we know is a huge issue that the city council could support. All right. Well, thank you all. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to just shoot us an email or whatever you need. If you want to be put in touch with anyone here or any other expert, please let us know. Hurricane Ida is a very, very sad moment for our city. We lost 13 lives, but we are also somewhat grateful that it was a wake-up call and that we have now spent the last 5 years learning from that moment and likely saving a lot of lives and a lot of lives in years to come. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your summer.